Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we are digging into one of the biggest, most shocking mysteries in modern finance, how the world's largest ever public offering was canceled at the very, very last minute. Okay, let's just start with a number, a huge number, $37 billion. I mean, just try to wrap your head around that for a second. It's an absolutely mind-boggling amount of money. So what was it for? Well, that was the colossal valuation of Ant Group, the Chinese fintech giant, as it was getting ready to go public back in late 2020. This thing was so big, it was going to blow past the IPO record set by Saudi Aramco. And get this, investors were so desperate for a piece that they put up a staggering $3 trillion in bids. That's trillion with a T. And then, poof, with just 48 hours left on the clock, the whole thing was stopped. Halted. The biggest IPO in history just vanished into thin air. And that right there is our central question, the $37 billion mystery. I mean, how does the world's largest public offering just disappear overnight? The whole thing set off this huge storm of speculation, leaving everyone from investors to analysts asking the same simple question: what just happened? So check out this timeline. It is wild how fast this all went down. You've got this controversial speech on October 24th, and then bam, just over a week later, the whole IPO is canceled. It all happened in the blink of an eye. All right, let's get into what most people think happened. A speech that shook an empire. The story you heard everywhere pointed to one guy and something he said. Of course, we're talking about Ant Group's founder, the billionaire Jack Ma. You know, the super charismatic, super outspoken guy. So with the IPO just around the corner, Ma gets up on stage at this huge summit and just lets loose. He called China's big banks pawn shops, and he said global banking rules were basically an outdated seniors club that was killing innovation. I mean, wow. So the story that took hold was pretty straightforward, right? You've got this guy who everyone used to call China's god of wealth, and he gets a little too big for his britches. He publicly challenges the state. And the state slaps him down. End of story. But is it really that simple? Could one speech, just a few words, really be enough to kill a $37 billion deal? Well, that speech was definitely the spark. But the fire had been building for a long, long time. To get the real story, we've got to look deeper than just one guy's big speech. And that brings us here. The rules change overnight. Because the real story, you see, isn't in the headlines. It's buried in the fine print of some new regulations. We have to forget the drama for a minute and actually look at how Ant's business worked and why that was making Beijing really, really nervous. And this right here, this is the heart of the problem. You had regulators looking at Ant and saying, wait a minute, you call yourself a tech company, but you look an awful lot like a giant bank. They were worried it was becoming a massive shadow bank, basically doing all the stuff a bank does, but without any of the rules a bank has to follow. And if you look at their own numbers, it's pretty eye-opening. You'd think their big moneymaker would be Alipay, right? The payment app everyone uses? Nope. It was their lending business, their credit tech platform. By 2020, almost 40% of their cash was coming from lending. That's huge. So here's the genius of their model, and also why it was so scary for regulators. Think of Ant as this super smart matchmaker. It would use all its data to set up tons and tons of loans, take a nice fee for itself, and then it would pass off almost all the risk, like 98% of it, to other banks. For Ant, it was an amazing deal. All the profit, almost none of the risk. And then the bombshell drops. These new rules. And get this, they were drafted the day before the IPO got suspended. The key rule? It said online lenders like Ant now had to put up their own money, at least 30% of any loan. That one rule just completely shattered their business model. Suddenly, the company that was about to go public didn't really exist anymore, not in the same way. That's the material event that officially killed the deal. So what happened next? Well, that brings us to the fall and cautious return, because the fallout from this was immediate. And it wasn't just about the company. Jack Ma himself, he just disappeared, vanished from the public eye for months. And of course, everyone started speculating about where he was. And when he finally did show up again, wow, the change was unbelievable. The old Jack Ma, the outspoken rebel, he was gone. The new Jack Ma was this quiet guy in the back, head down, taking notes while the president was talking. The message couldn't have been clearer. And that message from Beijing was pretty direct. We don't care how rich or famous you are, you do not overstep your bounds. The days of tech billionaires doing whatever they wanted were over. It was a wake-up call for every big company in China. So, what's the big takeaway here? What does this all mean for the future of tech? Let's wrap things up with innovation under new management. When you boil it all down, the whole Ant Group story was really about one thing: the end of the Wild West for China's tech scene. The government stepped in and basically said, we're in charge now, especially when it comes to something as important as money. So for all the big tech companies, the new rules of the game became crystal clear. You can't just call yourself tech to get around banking laws anymore. You're here to help the economy the way the government wants you to. You can still innovate, for sure, but you gotta stay inside the lines. And that leaves us with this one big question, right? This whole saga is all about that push and pull between innovation and control. And it makes you wonder, not just about China, but about tech everywhere. Can you really be a game-changing innovator if you're not allowed to break the rules anymore?